My name is Graham Dove, and I'm Assistant Professor at New York University. I'm presenting this paper, Signs of the Smart City, Exploring the Limits and Opportunities of Transparency, on behalf of myself and my co-author, Corbett, who is a research scientist at Google Research in the Responsible AI and Human-Centered Technology Organization. And Eric was the lead researcher on the work we report in the paper. So this work is situated in the growth of so-called smart city applications, or urban Internet of Things, urban IoT. And these are systems of sensing and analytics that are typically implemented with the aim of improving the efficiency of local governments. For example, through data-driven decision-making or service automation. However, this objective often comes into tension with public privacy and the individual rights of residents and other stakeholders. Examples of this tension have been seen, for example, in Toronto, San Diego, and in New York City, where our research took place. In Toronto, the proposal for a smart quayside redevelopment that incorporated an array of sensing technologies on the waterfront was met with opposition focused around data sharing and privacy, and the project was stopped. While in San Diego, a smart streetlights project has faced repeated pushback with regard to how law enforcement use the data that's being collected. And then finally, in New York, a program introducing free Wi-Fi and street furniture that incorporates tablet computers was initially criticized for weak data security and privacy. So as I said, the work we're reporting here took place in New York City. And New York has been a leader in open data and in recent years initiated a number of urban IoT smart cities type projects in response to the issues highlighted in the previous slide and similar concerns about the transparency of such smart city projects highlighted in its own transparency document, rather its own strategy document. And we were approached by the city's Office of Technology and Innovation to collaborate on a project to explore how local signage might offer local people transparency with regard to sensor deployments. And the project that followed was guided by the initial research question, how should transparency of smart city sensors be provided? And it started from the perspective that people are best served by local signage that can explain what the sensors are and what their purpose is. And the challenge, as we first envisioned it, was how can we design these signs to be most useful and informative to the people who live and work in the neighborhoods where sensors are being deployed. And in this slide, we see examples of such signage explaining the presence of sensors that monitor flooding and temperature and humidity. So in response to this challenge, we planned a program of participatory design workshops at public libraries in different locations across the city. And our aim was to use a process of capturing requirements for transparency signage as a method to better understand public concerns about what should be made visible with regard to sensor deployments. These workshops each lasted around 2 hours and involved 40 participants who were recruited by the local library where the workshop took place. Each workshop started with an overview and introductions. And then city officials presented on their strategy and objectives for IoT sensing deployments. At this stage, we also introduced participants to 4 different types of sensors that will provide a technical focus for the workshop activities. And these sensors are used to monitor noise at a home setting and also more of an industrial streetscape setting, atmospheric temperature and humidity, and also use computer vision to monitor street traffic, including cars and pedestrians. And the main body of the workshop was centered around the metaphor of sign making. Participants worked in groups of 3 or 4 and focused on a single sensor. This work was broken down into 4 activities. First, participants selected from among 10 prompts we developed based on prior literature. These were used to start conversation, frame the activity, and as a way to get the activity going and start filling in the worksheets. We then asked participants to generate questions in response to each of these prompts, or rather each of the 4 prompts that they selected from amongst these. And this was a mechanism for articulating concerns and prompting further conversation. Third, we asked the groups to consider how the answers to these questions might best be represented to other members of their community. We did this as a way of materializing their concerns and how they might be communicated. And finally, we conducted a shareback session to provide space for collective articulations. And in this slide, we show the setup for the group work activities. And here you can see it includes a sensor, a worksheet, the selection of prompts from which they chose, examples of media and layout for use to further develop the poster, and then post-its and other materials for kind of creative ideation. And following all the workshops, we conducted a deductive thematic analysis that highlighted 6 main concerns for transparency. And these were transparency of public participation, a transparency of civil rights, a transparency of contact and responsibility, a transparency of economics, a transparency of community value, and a transparency of dissent. Now, I'll only briefly talk about the first 2 of these here, and so I encourage you to refer to the paper for more details and for discussion of the others. And the first of these is the transparency of public participation. So this slide highlights a quote from a group in the second of our workshops. And that quote says, "I'd like a sign that would tell us, who did you involve in the process of this sensor being put here? What stakeholders in the community had some input in it? I would want to know who you talked to ahead of the time." And this group's work highlights how knowledge and understanding of the process and outcomes of participation, who was involved, when, for how long, and what did their involvement include, will be instrumental to questions of legitimacy around the deployment of sensors in the eyes of community members. And that transparency around public participation is needed to establish relationships with local residents. And the second of these transparencies is a transparency of civil rights. So this example, we highlight a quote from a group in our first workshop. The quote says, "Every citizen should have a Bill of Rights. So we want to know what our rights are and what choices we can make as it relates to the sensor." And this concern really emerged through a process of interactions with a city representative, and in response to the potential for the domestic noise sensor capturing audio. And it included questions about whether data will be available to law enforcement or whether it might be sold to private companies. And for this group of participants, the answers to those questions resulted in a desire to explicitly codify expectations and responses and provide a clear guidance as to what this might mean in terms of their civil and other rights. However, as we kind of continued to reflect on our analysis and on the processes that we'd undertaken during this research, we began to consider whether our initial framing, had actually been correct. And the more we considered this, the more we started to think that the process of transparency making was at least as important as the transparency artifacts. And so this has now started us along a path towards thinking about transparency differently. And in the paper, we start by highlighting limitations associated with thinking about information-centric transparency, And this could be the kind of thing that is typically and effectively conveyed through a sign. And instead, we're starting to think of transparency as a thing. And we use thing in the sense that Pellerin uses the word to describe socio-material sites of contestation, particularly around issues of concern. And while this work is at a very initial stage, we like to draw attention to three key aspects. First, the transparency can be thought of as an ongoing process of responding to what has been made visible, by who, and for what purpose, and therefore what might also be being obscured. All the time remaining aware that this is locally situated and will change over time. Second, that this should be a participatory process that equitably brings in diverse voices. And third, that this ongoing process should be social and collaborative, and the discussion and negotiation are important in navigating the potential for the meaning and implementations of transparency to change. So as I said, this work is an early exploration for us in thinking about how transparency might change in this new way, what we mean by moving from transparency as static to transparency as a process. And I encourage you to read the paper, and I also encourage you to reach out to us and let us know what you think.